Hello! In today's video, we're going to be going over whether an iPhone is worth it for live 2D tracking, and what are the pros and cons of getting either a webcam or an iPhone. So, I've loaded up my model twice on two separate windows. On the left we have the iPhone, and on the right we have the webcam. Now this is just the default parameter settings out of the box for VTube Studio, so I will need to tweak some stuff on the right side, BRB. So I've gone ahead and tweaked my settings for the webcam, as best as I can at least. That probably felt like barely any time at all, but I'd say it took me about 10 minutes to just set everything up on the right side there. So what is the main difference between the iPhone and webcam when it comes to the base tracking? Obviously there are extra features which I will also go over, but there is a big difference between the actual just base face tracking as well. So one of the main things that I noticed is the sensitivity of the mouth forms. It's a lot easier to naturally talk with the iPhone face tracking, as you may have noticed with my mouth on the right side here. Kind of struggles a little bit. One thing about the mouth though is it's actually harder to frown with the iPhone. There is a way to do it with the eyebrows down, if I can do it. Nope, I'm pouting instead. But most of the time this can be sorted with just a toggle, so I have this on here. And honestly, I'm not going to be frowning all that often anyway, so it's alright to just have it on a toggle for me personally. Another thing is the blink sensitivity. You may have noticed that the blinking on the left side feels a lot more natural compared to the right. And I did tweak this as much as I could, but it also doesn't help that the webcam does not pick up my eye widening very well. So it's always thinking that my eyes are widened, so I can widen my eyes like this. Normally they're just like this. Also, it's easier to narrow your eyes with the iPhone tracking, so you can see like it just closes my eyes on the webcam quite often. Now with the head angles, it's not actually too noticeable if you manage to change your settings up. One thing you will notice out of the box is the webcam will be a bit more tricky, especially with the wide angles. And there is still a bit of a difference even with my tweaks. And obviously there's another benefit of having iPhone tracking, which is the extra features. So we have things like the tongue out. And then we also have mouth X. And then we have the pout as well. So another thing that I've noticed is the eyebrows on the iPhone are actually a lot better at tracking. So this is kind of more important for like my sort of models where I usually have these fluffy ears, and they're generally connected to my eyebrows, so you can see them moving with my eyebrows. I did do a little bit of tweaking on my webcam, but it's always a little bit more stiff compared to my iPhone. So obviously the new feature with VTube Studio at the moment is the hand tracking. So the neat thing is with the iPhone is you can actually use it for the facial tracking, whilst also using a webcam for the hand tracking. And this is actually really helpful because I found that using the webcam for both head and hand tracking ends up with a few frame rate losses. So I can have my hand up with the iPhone tracking here, and it will stay at a steady 23-24 FPS. I'm using a very cheap webcam though, so you might have varied results, but it works well enough with my iPhone tracking here. So here I am using the webcam for both my face and my hand tracking, and the first thing I notice is the frame rate is lowered. So let's see what happens when I lift up my hand here. And it's more or less okay, but I do tend to find some issues, especially with my blinking. And this might be a me issue having a really cheap webcam, so I'd have to check it when I manage to get a upgrade. But for now, it does seem to drop the frame rate if you use both on one webcam. But of course there are webcams out there with better specs, so this might not be an issue for you. So here's the big question. Is it worth upgrading to an iPhone? Well, that completely depends, actually. There is a certain level of quality that you can get with a webcam that I think is perfectly decent. And of course you can invest in a slightly more expensive webcam which has better FPS limit. Like 60 frames per second is probably going to be a lot better to handle that head and hand tracking. But I do think that the iPhone full facial tracking features are worth it, but it completely depends on your budget. So I got this iPhone, it's the iPhone XR. I got it used for about £240-ish. I'll be flashing up the dollar amount on the screen somewhere around here. And obviously this is going to vary depending on what country you're in, but I would recommend trying to look for something refurbished or used if you're only looking to use it for face tracking, because obviously it is a little bit of a money investment. But I would say that I have noticed the big differences between the iPhone and the webcam tracking, and personally I would much prefer to use my iPhone to track my face in VTube Studio compared to my webcam nowadays. So if you haven't been sure whether to take the leap and just get an iPhone for that crispy full face tracking, maybe this video might have helped you a bit to sort of point out what the differences really are between the iPhone and webcam, and hopefully you can make a more informed decision, especially with that amount of money. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and with that I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye bye!